My wife cheated with her ex at the reunion, so I froze our assets and left her with nothing. Calder Matthews Studden, his custom all-up walk-in closet, methodically buttoning his dress shirt. Through the open doorway, he could see his reflection multiplied. In the master bathroom's trio of mirrors, each one showing a man who looked successful on paper, but felt like a stranger in his own home. The morning light filtering through the bathroom's frosted windows got the silver threading through his dark hair, evidence of 23 years of marriage that had aged him more than time alone. The sounds of laughter echoed from down the hallway. His wife Maris and their daughter Sloane sharing Ganathaw, private joke he wouldn't be privy to. Their voices grew louder as they approached the master bedroom, their heels clicking against the marble flooring he had paid for during last year's renovation. "Mom, you have to wear the red one." Sloane's voice carried through the space. "The black dress is nice, but the red is absolutely killer. You don't think it's too much for a family reunion?" Maris asked, though Calder could hear the false modesty in her tone. She already knew which dress would wear. She'd spent 3 hours at Neiman Marcus selecting it specifically for today. "Too much, please," Sloane coughed, her voice audible even from the closet. "Half the fun is making everyone else feel underdressed." Her voice took on a sly tone that made Calder's hands pause on his tie. "Besides, certain people appreciate a woman who knows how to make an entrance." The meaningful emphasis on certain people made Calder's jaw clench. He knew exactly who Sloane meant. Alden Crawford would be at the reunion today. His presence had dominated their conversations for the past week. Ever since the guest list had been circulated in the family group chat, Sloane Marie's voice held a pretense of scolding that fooled no one. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why not? It's not like Dad. He's probably making spreadsheets about the cost-benefit ratio of wearing designer versus department store." Their shared laughter felt like ice watered down Calder's spine. He finishing his tie with practiced precision, remembering when he'd first learned the Windsor knot. It had been for his wedding day, standing in a much smaller bathroom, full of hope and dreams about the family he would build. The memory felt like a mockery now. Calder stepped out of the closet into the master bedroom, taking in the scene before him. Clothes were strewn across the king-sized bed, designer pieces that had cost more than his first car. Mera stood before the full-length mirror, already wearing the red dress that seemed designed to draw attention, its neckline plunging daringly low, the fabric clinging to curves that belied her 45 years. Their daughter perched on the tufted ottoman beside her, both of them ignoring the chaos they created in their pursuit of the perfect outfit. "The bathroom counter is covered in makeup," he said, keeping his voice neutral despite the frustration. Building in his fist. "We need to leave in 30 minutes to arrive on time." Maris barely glanced at his way, too busy adjusting her dress. "Relax," called her. "Nobody shows up exactly when these things start. We have plenty of time." "Yeah, Dad," Sloane added, rolling her eyes as she tapped away on her phone. "It's not like it's own of your precious board meetings where everyone has to march in at exactly 9 a.m. sharp. God, you're so uptight about everything." "The invitation said 2 o'clock, Calder pointed out, moving to straighten the pile of discarded cloths. "It's already 1:30 and the drive to the country club takes Obi leave those." Maris interrupted, finaliteering to face him. "Rosa can deal with them tomorrow. That's what we pay her for, isn't it? Rosa shouldn't have to clean up unnecessary messes just because." "Oh my God," Sloane groaned dramatically, cutting him off. "Here we go again with the lectures about responsibility and consideration." "Newsflash, Dad. Normal people don't spend their time worrying about the feelings of the cleaning lady. Rosa is a person who deserves respect, Calder said firmly, continuing to hang up the scattered garments, just like everyone else who works to make our lives comfortable. Speaking of making our lives comfortable, Sloane said, her tone shifting to the sweet voice she used when she wanted something. Did you transfer the money for my spring break trip? Calder paused, the designer dress still in his hands. I thought, we discussed this yesterday. $2,000 for a weekend in Miami seems excessive, especially considering your credit card bills from last month. Mum already said it was fine. Sloane's sweet tone vanished, replaced by the entitled edgehead, grown too familiar. Of course, it's fine, Maris interjected before Calder could respond, spraying Aneth a cloud of expensive perfume round herself. God forbid our daughter actually enjoys her college years, instead of penny pinching like some people. There's a difference between penny pinching and responsible spending, Calder said, feeling the familiar tension headache beginning to build. I work hard to provide for this family. Here we go. Gun. Sloane threw her hands up in exasperation. The great martyr called her Matthews, sacrificing everything for his ungrateful family. Should we bow down now or wait until after your speech about fiscal responsibility? Maris Lord, the sound sharp and dismissive as she applied another coat of lipstick. Honey, just transfer the money. It's not like we can't afford it. She turned, fixing him with a calculating look. Unless, is there something you're not telling us about our finances? The insinuation stung. After 23 years of carefully managing their wealth, growing his business from a startup to a successful corporation, ensuring they'd never have to worry about money. And still, she questioned his competence. Our finances are fine, he said stiffly. That's not the point. It's about teaching values, and values. Sloane coughed, standing to adjust her own designer outfit in the mirror. Your values are as outdated as that suit, new fence, Dad. But maybe if you spent less time worrying about saving for retirement and more time actually living, you wouldn't be so boring. The words hit their mark with practiced precision. Calder pulled out his phone, making the transfer while trying to ignore the triumphant look. Sloane and Maris exchanged in the mirror. $2,000, a drop in the ocean of their wealth, but another crack in the foundation of respect he tried to build. Thanks, Daddy, Sloane said sweetly, her phone pinging with the transfer notification. See, was that so hard? Calder watched as his daughter bounced across the room to join her mother at the mirror, both of them checking their appearance one time. The scene before him captured everything wrong with his family dynamic. The superficial bond between mother and daughter, their casual dismissal of his concerns, the way they treated him like an ATM rather than a husband and father. We should get going, he said quietly, picking up his suit jacket. Traffic might be heavy. 5 more minutes, Maris replied absently, leaning closer to the mirror to check her makeup. Perfection takes time, darling. Not that you'd understand that. Sloane snickered at the jab, and Calder felt something shift inside him. He watched them, pimp and pin, preparing themselves to impress a man who wasn't their husband or father, and wondered when exactly he'd lost control of his family. When had his wife's beauty become a weapon instead of a gift? When had his daughter learned to manipulate instead of love? As he stood there in his precisely pressed suit in the middle of the bedroom he'd paid for but never felt comfortable in, Calder Matthews realized he was standing on the edge of something momentous. He just didn't know yet if it was a breakthrough or a breakdown. The car will be out front, Hesed, turning to leave the room. Neither of them acknowledged his departure, too busy discussing whether Maris should wear her diamond tennis bracelet or the sapphire one. Both anniversary gifts from him that had been received with dismissive thanks. Calder descended the curved staircase, each step carrying him further from the laughter upstairs, but closer to a decision point he could feel approaching. Today's reunion would change everything. He could feel it in his bones. He just didn't know yet how much his family would come to regret their choices. The drive to the country club stretched Calder's nerves to their breaking point. From the back seat, Sloane orchestrated what felt like a carefully planned assault on his patience, her voice full of calculated excitement as she read updates from the family group chat. "Uncle James just arrived," she announced, her fingers flying. Across her phone screen, he brought his new Mercedes. "Mum, you know he usually rides with him, right?" Maris shifted in the passenger seat, checking her lipstick in the visor mirror for the dozenth time. "Oh, I hadn't thought about that." The lie hung in the air like her expensive perfume. They had discussed nothing else for days. How Alden Crawford always came to family events with James, how he'd recently divorced his second wife, how successful his investment firm had become. "The parking lot's getting full," Calder observed, turning into the country club entrance. "If we'd left when I suggested." "Oh my God, Dad, seriously." Sloane leaned forward between the seats. "Nobody cares about parking spots except you. Besides, Mum needs to make an entrance, right, Mum?" Maris smiled, a practiced expression that never quite reached her eyes. A lady should never be the first to arrive at a party, it seems, eager. But being fashionably let-see old friends is totally different, Sloane added with a knowing smirk. "Especially friends you haven't seen in forever." Calder guided their Mercedes into one of the few remaining spots, deliberately taking his time with their parking job. Each second he delayed was another second before the inevitable, before he'd have to watch his wife's eyes light up for another. "Man, there's Uncle James's car." Sloane practically bounced out of her seat the moment he turned off the engine. "Mum, look who's standing with him." Through the windshield, Calder could see them. James and his wife Susan chatting with a tall figure in an expensive suit. Even from this distance, Alden Crawford's confidence was visible in his stance in the way. Others seemed to naturally orbit around him. Well, Maris smoothed her dress as she stepped out of the car. "We shouldn't keep family waiting." The walk to the country club entrance felt like a march to execution. Calder watched as his wife's entire demeanor transformed, her steps becoming lighter, her smile growing more genuine, her hand rising to casually brush through her styled hair. Beside her, Sloane practically vibrated with anticipation, her role as matchmaker already in full swing. "Maris Matthews, you're a vision." Alden's voice carried across the parking lot, rich with charm that made Calder's teeth clench. The man stepped away from his group, arms opening in welcome, as though he had every right to embrace another man's wife. Alden Maris moved forward, accepting his embrace with enthusiasm that made Cedar's blood pressure spike. "You look amazing. Silicon Valley must agree with you. Not half as well as time agrees with you. You haven't aged a day since college." His eyes flickered to Sloane. "And this can't be little Sloane. Last time I saw you, you were barely up to your mother's waist." "Hi, Mr. Crawford," Sloane replied, turning on the charm she usually reserved for getting her way. "Mum's told me so many stories about you. All good ones, I hope." Alden laughed, still holding Maris's gaze. "Oh, definitely," Sloane assured him with a meaningful smile. especially the ones about college. Mum says, you were quite the dancer back then. The implications in her tone made Calder step forward, placing himself slightly between Alden and his wife. Alden, he said. Alden's acknowledgement was barely a nod before he turned back to Maris. Well, have to see if your mother still remembers any of our old moves later. Before Calder could object, James and Susan joined their group, creating a buffer of socially acceptably variation. But Calder noticed how Alden maintained his position close to Maris, how his wife seemed unconsciously lean toward her old flame, how Sloane worked to keep the conversation flowing in their direction. The country club's grand entrance hall was decorated with flowers and banners welcoming the extended family. Clusters of relatives stood chatting, their voices creating a steady hum of conversation that did nothing to drown out the sound of his wife's laughter at Alden's jokes. Calder, his cousin Michael approached, drink in hand. Al's business still crushing it in the tech sector. It's been a good year, Calder replied automatically. His attention split between the conversation and the way Alden's hand kept finding reasons to touch Maris's arm. I heard you closed that deal with the Singapore group, Michael continued, oblivious to Calder's distraction. What was it? 50 million? 67, Calder corrected, watching as Sloane skillfully maneuvered the conversation across the room, ensuring her mother and Alden remained at the center of their social circle. Damn impressive, Michael whistled. You always were the smart one. Remember when Alden tried to compete with you back in college? His startup tanked while yours took off. Though bet, Weenus, he lowered his voice. Looks like he's done pretty well for himself since then. Just bought a place in the Hamptons from what I heard. The irony wasn't lost on Calder. The beach house Maris had wanted, the one he deemed too risky an investment. Alden had won that round, just like he could already imagine the conversation this would spark on the drive home. The pointed comments about his lack of spontaneity, his failure to understand what his wife needed. As the afternoon wore on, Calder watched the careful dance unfold. Maris and Alden never spent too long together, never did anything that could be definitively labeled inappropriate, but their orbit around each other was constant, their glances charged with meaning, their brief touches lingering just a moment too long. Sloane worked the room like a conductor, orchestrating conversations that highlighted her Martha's wit and beauty while subtly undermining her father. Mum was just telling us about the charity gala she's organizing. She'd say to one group, then turn to another with, can you believe Dad didn't want her to take on such a big project? He thought it would be too stressful for her. Each comment was a paper cut, small enough to be dismissed individually, but collectively painting a clear picture. Calder was the villain in their story, the controlling husband who held back his vibrant wife, the boring father who didn't understand his daughter's needs. They're about to serve dinner, Suzanne announced, appearing at his elbow. We're all at table 3. You, Maris, Sloane, James, and I. And she hesitated. Alden, of course, they were. Calder looked at his assigned seat, strategically placed to ensure he had a perfect view of his wife and her former flame throughout the meal. He wondered if Sloane had had a hand in the seating arrangements. It wouldn't surprise him. As they moved toward their table, Calder caught sight of his reflection in one of the hall's ornate mirrors. He saw what everyone else saw, a successful businessman in an expensive suit, the very picture of stability and security. But he also saw what his wife and daughter saw, a predictable man, safe and boring, useful for his wallet, but not his passion. The question was, what would they see when he finally stopped being predictable? The dining room of the country club glowed with warm light from crystal chandeliers, their sparkle matched only by the gleam of fine china and silver place settings. At table 3, Calder sat rigid in his chair, each minute feeling like an hour, as he watched his wife captivate their dinner companions with practiced charm. "Remember that spring break trip to Cancun?" Alden asked, his voice carrying easily across the table. "The way you danced on that beach, Maris, I'd never seen anything like it." Maris laughed, the sound warm and genuine in a way Calder hadn't heard directed at him in years. "God, we were so young and crazy back then. Remember that little beachside bar where they taught us to salsa?" "Young and crazy," Sloane interjected, her tone deliberately provocative. "Mum, you're still the best dancer I know. Dad's the only one who never wants to see you dance anymore." The comment drew knowing looks from around the table. Calder cut into his perfectly cooked steak, focusing on the motion of his knife and fork rather than the way Alden's eyes lingered on his wife. "Your father prefers more structured activities," Maris added, sipping her wine. "Spreadsheets, investment, portfolios, retirement planning. Those are his idea of excitement." James chuckled uncomfortably, clearly sensing the tension. Well, Calder's business sense has served him well. That new tech acquisition must have been quite profitable. "Oh yes," Maris's voice dripped with false sweetness. "Calder's very good with money. It's just a shame he forgets there's more to life than profit margins." "Like spontaneity," Alden offered, raising his wine glass in Maris' direction. "The willingness to seize the moment, take risks, dance when the music calls." Calder set down his utensils, the silver making a soft click against fine china. "Some risks aren't worth taking." "That's exactly your problem." Sloane rolled her eyes dramatically. "Everything's about risk assessment with you, Dad. God forbid anyone actually lives a little." "There's a difference between living and being reckless," Calder responded, his voice leveled despite the anger building in his chest. "Reckless?" Maris laughed chirpily. "Is that what you call having fun? No wonder we hardly go out anymore." "When was the last time you took me dancing?" Calder. "When was the last time you did anything spontaneous?" The table fell into uncomfortable silence. Susan busied herself with her salad, while James suddenly found his water glass fascinating. Only Alden seemed 80s, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I remember when you used to love dancing," he said to Maris, his voice soft with nostalgia. "You moved like music was in your soul. It's a crime to let talent like that go to waste." The band in the adjacent ballroom began to play a slow melody, drifting through the open doors. Alden stood, extending his hand toward Maris with practiced grace. "Speaking of waste," he smiled, "would you do me the honor?" Sloane practically bounced in her seat. "Oh, Mum, you have to. When was the last time you had a proper dance partner?" Calder rose slowly from his chair, his voice cutting through the moment like a blade. "Maris, if you dance with him, I'll leave you." The conversation at nearby tables stuttered to a halt. Maris stared at him, her eyes widening before narrowing in. "Anger, excuse me," she hissed, color rising in her cheeks. "Are you actually threatening me over a dance?" "Dad, you're being ridiculous," Sloane interjected, her tone dripping with disdain. "God, could you be any more insecure? It's just a dance. You're embarrassing yourself and Mum." "You heard me," Calder said, his resolve hardening as years of suppressed anger crystallized in cold certainty. "Make your choice," Mara stood, Her chin lifted in defiance, the red dress catching the light, reminding him of warning signs he should have heeded years ago. "You don't get to control me," called her. "I'm not one of your employees. You can order around." "Yeah, Dad," Sloane added, standing beside her mother like a mirror image of rebellion. "Maybe if you weren't so controlling and paranoid, Mom wouldn't need to dance with other men to feel appreciated." The dining room had grown quiet, dozens of eyes watching the drama unfold. Calder looked between them, his wife and daughter united against him. The realization that had been building for years finally solidified. He was nothing more than a convenience to them, a source of financial security they tolerated but didn't respect. "Last chance, Maris," he said quietly, each word carrying the weight of 23 years of accumulated disappointment. "Don't do this." Maris took Alden's hand, her eyes locked challengingly on CD's. "Come on, Alden, I'd love to dance." The room watched as they moved to the dance floor, Alden's hands settling possessively on his wife's waist. The music played something slow and romantic, and they swayed together, their bodies closer than proprietor Denvid. Maris laughed at something Alden whispered in her ear, her hands sliding up to his shoulders in a gesture of thought spoke of familiar intimacy. "Happy now, Dad?" Sloane's voice dripped with contempt as she returned to her seat, making a scene over nothing. "Mom's right. You really need to get over your insecurity issues." But Calder wasn't listening anymore. He watched as Alden's hand drifted lower on his wife's back, as Maris leaned into him, their faces close enough to share breath. 23 years of marriage, countless sacrifices, endless patience. All of it meant nothing in the face of this deliberate, public betrayal. Without a word, he turned and walked away from the table, his footsteps steady across the polished floor, each step carrying him further from the sounds of music and laughter. He could hear Sloane's dismissive scoff behind him, could practically see her and Maris exchanging triumphant looks, certain he would return with his tail between his legs, ready to be exploited once again. The country club's parking lot was dark now, the early evening air carrying a chill that matched the ice forming around his heart. He got into his car, the car he bought because Maris said it was the right brand for their social circle, and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, he could see the warm glow from the clubhouse windows, Cold Imogen, his wife and daughter, still reeling in their perceived victory. They had no idea that this dance would be their last waltz with wealth and security. No idea that their comfortable world was about to crumble. No idea that man they dismissed as boring and predictable had finally reached his breaking point. Calder Matthews Dravento, the gathering darkness, his mind already formulating plans. They wanted to dance fine, but this time he would be calling the tune. The morning after the reunion, Maris woke to an empty house and a dozen missed calls from her daughter. She grabbed her phone, her head still fuzzy from last night's wine and dancing. "Sloane," she answered, stifling a yawn. "What's wrong?" "It's barely 9 o'clock. Dad's not answering his phone." Sloane's voice crackled through the speaker like it all. "Have you heard from him?" Mara sat up, the silk sheets sliding off her shoulders as she glanced at the untouched side of the bed. "He's probably at the office sulking. You know how dramatic he can be?" "Mum, I already called his office. Jessica says he hasn't come in, and his calendar is completely cleared for the next month." Something cold settled in Maris's stomach. She swung her legs out of bed, patting across the plush carpet to Calder's closet. "He's just being difficult. He'll get over it once he Thewards died in her throat as she pulled open the closet door. Empty hangers greeted her where Calder's suits should have been. The built-in drawers stood open, stripped of their contents. His leather briefcase, always positioned adroitly by the door, was gone. "Mum," Sloane's voice rose with concern. "What's wrong?" Maris, stared at the vacant space. "He took his clothes." "What?" Sloane screeched, making her pull the phone away from her ear. "What do you mean, he took his clothes?" "All of them. Everything. His suits, casual clothes, even those hideous golf shirts he loved so much. They're all gone, oh my God." Sloane's voice dropped to a whisper. "Do you think he actually meant it about leaving?" "Don't be ridiculous," Mira snapped, but uncertainty crept into her tone. "Your father doesn't have the spine for something like this. He's just trying to prove a point." "Should we call Uncle Michael? Maybe he knows something." "No," Mira said firmly, closing the closet door. "We're not giving him the satisfaction of making a scene. He'll come back when he's done throwing his little tantrum." But as the day wore on, doubt began to gnaw at her confidence. Calder's toothbrush was missing from the master bathroom. His laptop was gone from his study. Even his reading glasses, perpetually perched on his bedside table, had vanished. Theodore bell rang just as Maris was pouring her third glass of wine. She opened it to find Sloane, still wearing last night's makeup and clutching her phone like a lifeline. "Have you checked the accounts?" were her first words as she brushed past her mother into the foyer. "What?" Maris followed her daughter to Calder's study. "Why would I need to check the accounts?" Sloane was already logging into the banking website on Calder's desktop computer. "Because Dad manages all the money. Mum, remember last month when you couldn't even find the password to check your credit card balance? That's what accountants are for," Maris said dismissively. But she moved to look over Sloane's shoulder as the screen loaded. "Oh," Sloane's fingers flew across the keyboard. No, what?" Maris leaned closer. "What's wrong?" "The joint account." Sloane clicked through several pages. "Mum, it's empty. There's only like $55,000 left. That's impossible." Maris pushed her daughter aside, taking control of the mouse. "There should be at least $500,000 in there." "Check the investment accounts," Sloane said, pulling up another window, her face growing paler. "Those are empty too. Everything's been transferred out in the last 12 hours. He can't do this." Maris's voice rose with panic. "That's my money too. Call the bank. Tell them it's a mistake." "It's not a mistake." Mom Sloane sat back, running her hands through her disheveled hair. "Dad's name is on everything. He has full access. Remember, you said you didn't want to deal with all the boring financial stuff when you got married." The phone rang, making them both jump. Maris grabbed it, hope flaring, called her Mrs. Matthews. An unfamiliar voice replied, "This is American Express. We're calling about some unusual activity on your account." Yes, Maris cut in. "There must be some mistake. Your husband called this morning to remove you as an authorized user on all cards," the representative continued, "as the primary card holder. It's his right to do so. I'm calling to inform you that your cards have been deactivated." Maris sank into Calder's leather office chair, her wine glass trembling in her hand. He can't do this. I'm his wife. I understand this is upsetting. But legally," she hung up, turning to Sloane with wild eyes. "Your father's lost his mind. Call him again. Call everyone, his friends, colleagues, family. Someone must know where he is." Sloane was already dialing, but each call went straight to voicemail. With each failed attempt, their composure cracked further. "What about my tuition?" Sloane suddenly asked, her face going even paler. "My spring break trip, the money he transferred yesterday." Another call interrupted them, this time from Sloane's bank. The transfer had been reversed. All of it. That vindictive bastard. Maris spat, pacing the study. All this over one stupid dance. He's being ridiculous. "Mum," Sloane's voice was small, youngissimo. "What are we going to do? The house payment is due next week, and your cards aren't working." "Well, figure it out," Mara said firmly, but her hand shook as she lifted the wine glass to her lips. "He can't just disappear. He's probably at some hotel waiting for us to beg him to come back." But as they called every hotel in the city, then every hotel in neighboring cities, the truth began to sink in. Calder Matthews, predictable, boring, reliable. Called her hard, outmaneuvered them completely. "Maybe," Sloane hesitated, picking at her manicured nails. "Maybe we should call it Dan. He's good with money. And after last night..." Maris's laugh held an edge of hysteria. "Oh yes, let's call the man your father accused me of betraying him with. That will definitely help the situation." "Well, we have to decide anything," Sloane snapped. "The electricity bill is due in 3 days. My tuition payment is pending, and we have no access to any money. Face it, Mum. Dad finally grew a spine, and he's using it to screw us over." The doorbell rang again, making them both freeze. Hope and dread warring in Maris's expression as she hurried to answer it. But instead of Calder's apologetic face, she found a courier holding an envelope. "Mrs. Matthews." He held out a clipboard livery requiring signature. With trembling fingers, Maris signed and took the envelope. She recognized Calder's precise handwriting on the front, but when she tore it open, she found only a single sheet of paper containing a list of account numbers and passwords. A note at the bottom read, "For tax purposes, you'll need these for the IRS. I paid everything through the end of the month. After that, you're on your own." See, Maris crumpled the paper in her fist. "Your father's declaration of war." A week into Calder's disappearance, the reality of their situation hit home with the force of a sledgehammer. Mara sat at the kitchen island, surrounded by past due notices and financial statements, while Sloane paced the marble floors with her phone. Pressed to her ear, "Please, Mr. Crawford," Sloane's voice dripped with manufactured sweetness. "Mum's really struggling right now, and we thought, given your history..." Maris could hear Alden's response even from across the room. "I'm sorry, Sloane, but I can't get involved. Your father's a powerful man in this city, and frankly, this situation is too messy for my taste." But last week at the reunion, last week was different. Alden cut her off. "A dance is one thing. Financial entanglement is another. I wish you both the best, but my answer is no." The call ended with a click. Sloane stared at her phone in disbelief. That lying snake. After all his talk about seizing moments and taking risks, he won't even loan us enough to cover the mortgage. Men like Alden don't seize moments that might cost them money. Maris said bitterly, pushing away another overdue notice. "Your father knew exactly what he was doing, leaving us hanging like this." "Maybe we should call the police," Sloane suggested, dropping onto a bar stool. "File a missing person report or something, and tell them what Maris lied sharply. That your father left after I danced with another man. That he took his own money from his own accounts. They'll laugh us out of the station." The doorbell rang, making them both tense. They had developed a Pavlovian response to that sound over the past week, hope wearing with dread each time. Mrs. Matthews, a man in a suit, stood at the door, holding a thick envelope. "I'm Richard Dawson from Matthews Technology Corporation's Legal Department." Maris's spine stiffened. "Legal Department? What's this about?" "Your husband asked me to deliver these documents personally." He held out the envelope. "It's regarding your status as a beneficiary on various company holdings and insurance policies." With trembling fingers, Maris opened the envelope, her eyes scanning. The documents, growing wider with each page. "He's removed me." Her voice rose with incredulity. "From everything, as is his right as CEO and majority shareholder," Richard replied professionally. "The changes are already processed. I'm merely here to provide formal notification." "But I helped him build that company," Maris protested. "He hosted the dinner parties, entertained the clients, played the perfect corporate wife for 23 years. I'm not authorized to discuss that matter." Further, Richard stepped back. "Good day, Mrs. Matthews." The door closed with a soft click that seemed to echo through the increasingly empty-feeling house. Maris turned to find Sloane reading the documents over her shoulder. "Mum," Sloane's voice wavered. "What are we going to do? My credit card's air-maxed out, and the university is threatening to drop my classes if the tuition payment doesn't clear." "By Friday, call your grandmother," Maris said, moving to the bar card and pouring a generous measure of scotch. "Called her scotch. Maybe she'll help." Sloane's law was hollow. "Already tried," she said. And I quote, "Your father's a good man who deserved better than watching his wife throw herself at another man in public." Then she hung up on me. "That's sanctimonious." Maris caught herself taking a deep breath. "Fine. What about your trust fund? The one your father set up when you were born?" Frozen, Sloane slumped onto the sofa. "Dad changed the terms last week. I can't access it until I'm 30, and only if I maintain, get this, proven financial responsibility and ethical behavior." The doorbell rang again. This time, it was a courier with another envelope. This one containing an email thread Calder had printed out. It showed correspondence between him and Alden from 3 days ago, warning Alden to stay away from Maris, unless he wanted certain financial irregularities in his company's books to become public knowledge. "He's thought of everything," Sloane whispered, reading over her mother's shoulder. "Every single backup plan we might have had." "Your father always was good with details," Maris said bitterly, reaching for the scotch again. "I just never thought he'd use that against us." The phone rang. Maris's regular hairstylist calling to confirm that her standing appointment had been cancelled. Then her personal shopper informing her that her store accounts had all been closed. Then the country club notifying her that her membership had been revoked. "He's systematically erasing our entire life," Maris realized, each call bringing fresh humiliation. "Everything we built, everything we had. Maybe we should apologize." Sloane suggested, desperation creeping into her voice. "Tell him we're sorry about the dance, about everything. I'll retreat." Maris pulled out her phone, scrolling through dozens of unanswered messages. "Listen to what I sent him yesterday." Called her, "Please. We can talk about this. What happened at the reunion was a mistake. Come home and we'll work it out." What did he say? Nothing. But an hour later, our housekeeper Rosa called to say she'd been given a generous severance package and a glowing recommendation for a new job. "He's not just cutting us off, he's dismantling our entire support system." Sloane's phone buzzed with a text. Her face crumpled as she read it. Chelsea just uninvited me from her Aspen trip. Apparently, Dad called her father and told him about the money I borrowed last month. The money I swore I'd pay back, but never did. He's turning everyone against us. Maris realized, the scotch burning in her throat. All those little secrets, all those small deceits we thought nobody would ever know about. Mum, Sloane's voice was small. I'm scared. I don't know how to live without money. Maris finished, looking around at their luxurious home, a home they might not be able to keep much longer. Neither do I, sweetheart. Neither do I. The doorbell rang one final time that evening. This time it was a different courier, holding a small box. Inside, they found Maris's wedding ring, the one she'd left on her bedside table the night of the reunion bess. It clashed with her other jewelry. A note accompanied it. You chose your dance partner. Now you can live with that choice. Mara stared at the ring, remembering how young and hopeful she'd been when Calder first placed it on her finger. She'd thought him boring then, too, but safe. Dependable. She'd never imagined Heck'd be this calculating, this ruthless. I always told you your father was predictable, she said to Sloane, who sat shell-shocked beside her. I was wrong. We never really knew him at all. 2 weeks after Calder's departure, the Matthews mansion felt like a mausoleum. Without Rosa to maintain it, dust gathered on the expensive furnishings, and unopened mail piled up on the entry table, most of it bearing red final notice stamps. In the kitchen, take-it containers multiplied. Neither Maris nor Sloane had ever learned to cook, always relying on their personal chef, who, like Rosa, had been efficiently removed from their lives. Your tuition payment bounced again, Maris called out as Sloane descended the stairs, still wearing her designer pajamas at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The university sent another email. I know, Sloane snapped, heading straight for the coffee maker. They're threatening to drop me from all my classes, as if this whole thing isn't humiliating enough. Maybe you could get a student loan, Mara suggested, scrolling through her phone. Or a part-time job. Sloane slammed her coffee mug down, liquid sloshing over the pristine counter. A job? Are you serious? Do you have any idea what that will do to my social standing? Your social standing? Maris laughed bitterly. Honey, wake up. Your friends already dropped you the moment they realized your credit cards didn't work anymore because you had to dance with him. Sloane whirled on her mother, eyes blazing. You couldn't just say no. You had to prove a point, had to show everyone. You could still attract someone like Alden. Don't you dare blame this on me. Maris stood, her own anger rising. Who was it that kept pushing us together? Go on, Mom. It's just a dance. Dad's being ridiculous. Mom, don't let him control you. I didn't think he'd actually leave. Sloane's voice rose to a shriek. You always said he was spineless, that he'd never stand up to us. This is your fault. You're the one who's supposed to know how to handle him. Handle him. Maris grabbed the bottle of wine she'd opened for breakfast. Your father spent 23 years pretending to be this docile, predictable man. Meanwhile, setting up contingency plans, moving money, preparing for the moment we pushed him too far. Some handler I turned out to be. The doorbell rang. Another unwelcome intrusion into their deteriorating world. Sloane yanked it open to find her best friend, Madison, standing there looking uncomfortable. Hey, Madison shifted on her feet. I came to get my Birkin bag back. The one I loaned you last month. Sloane's face fell. Maddie, come on. We've been friends since kindergarten. You know I'll pay you back for everything once this blows over. That's what you said about the money you borrowed for those concert tickets, Madison replied. And the spring break deposit and the emergency shopping trip to New York. My parents found out about all of it, Sloane. They're making cut ties. Making you, Sloane's laugh was ugly, right? Because you've never had an independent thought in your life, just like everyone else. You're abandoning me the moment things get. You're the one who lied to me, Madison shot back multiple times. You never intended to pay any of us back, did you? You just kept taking and taking, knowing your dad would bail you out. Get out, Sloane's voice was ice. And keep the stupid bag. I have a dozen better ones anyway. Not anymore, you don't, Madison muttered as she turned to Olive. Good luck finding new friends to scam. Sloane slammed the door so hard the crystal chandelier rattled. She to Netto find Maris watching her with an odd expression. What? She demanded. How many people did you borrow money from? Maris asked quietly. How many lies are out there waiting to come back to us? Oh, that's rich coming from you. Should we talk about your lies? About how you've been flirting with Alden for years? How you deliberately wore that red dress because you knew he'd be there? I'm your mother, you're a joke. Sloane's words hit like fizzy blows. A middle woman so desperate for attention, she'd risk everything just to feel desirable again. And now look at us. No money, no friends, no future. Hope that dance was worth it, Mom. Maris's hand moved before she could think, the slap echoing through the foyer. Sloane staggered back, hand to her cheek, eyes wide with shock. You spoiled, ungrateful little brat, Maris whispered, trembling. I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me. You gave me nothing, Sloane replied, her voice shaking. Dad gave who's wreathing. We just took it for granted and treated him like an ATM. Well, guess what? The ATM is closed and it's Alia's fault, my fault. Maris threw her wine glass against the wall, red liquid staining the expensive wallpaper like blood. Who was it that kept pushing us together at the reunion? Who kept making those little comments about how boring your father was? How he needed to learn a lesson? You orchestrated this whole disaster because you taught me how. Sloane screamed. Every manipulation, every scheme. I learned it all from you. That's how you handle men, darling. She mimicked her mother's voice. Need to be managed, controlled. Well, fantastic job managing Dad. Mum, really stellar work. The doorbell rang again. This time it was a process server delivering notice that their joint credit card companies were suing for unpaid balances. The amount made both women blanch. I can't do this anymore, Sloane said, staring at the papers. Stay here and watch everything fall apart. Where do you think you're going to go? Maris asked. Your father froze all your accounts. Your friends have abandoned you. You have nothing thanks to you. Sloane headed for their stairs. I'm going to pack. Whatever's left, that's worth something. Maybe if I sell enough, I can at least save my Spatat University. That's right, run away. Maris called after her. It's what you do best when things get difficult. Just like with that boy last year. What was his name? The one whose father almost sued us. Sloane froze on the stairs. Don't you dare bring that up. You promised we'd never talk about it. Why not? Your father paid him off, just like he paid off all your other mistakes. But Daddy's not here to clean up your messes anymore, is he? I hate you. The words fell like stones in the quiet house. I hate what you've turned me into. I hate that I'm just like you, honey. Marie Slowe was hollow. You're worse than me. At least I only manipulated men who could afford it. You scam your own friends." They stared at each other across the foyer. Two women cut from the same cloth, finally seeing their true reflections in each other's eyes. The bond between them, once so strong, shattered like Maris's wineglass on the marble floor. The doorbell rang one final time. Another courier, another envelope. Inside was a single photograph. Calder had what looked like a casual dinner with colleagues, smiling genuinely for the first time in years. The message was clear. He had moved on, started fresh, while they remained trapped in the gilded cage of their own making, destroying each other as their world crumbled around them. Sloane turned away, climbing the stairs without another word. Maris watched her go, remembering all the times they'd plotted together on those same steps. Thinking they were so clever, so superior, now they couldn't even look at each other. In the growing darkness of the house they might soon lose. Maris poured another glass of wine with trembling hands. Somewhere out there, Calder was building his life, free from their manipulations and demands. Meanwhile, his wife and daughter had discovered the hardest lesson of all, that the bonds forged in deceit shatter the moment fortune turns against you. 1 month after the fateful dance, a plain white envelope arrived at what remained of the Matthews household. Maris sat at Thekachin Island, her once perfect manicure chipped and grown out as she stared at the precise handwriting she'd now anywhere. The sound of Sloane's heels on the marble floor, one of the few designer items she hadn't yet sold, announced her daughter's arrival. "Another past due notice?" Sloane asked, her voice harsh from lack of sleep. "No." Maris held up the envelope. "It's from your father." Sloane practically lunged across the island, grabbing for Thelator. "Open it." With trembling fingers, Maris broke the seal. Inside, they found several pages of meticulously detailed documentation, along with a letter written in Calder's unmistakable style. "Dear Maris and Sloane," Maris read aloud, her voice catching. "By now you've had time to appreciate the consequences of your choices. Consider this letter your final lesson in cause and effect." "Skip the lecture," Sloane snapped. "What does Hewant?" Maris continued reading, her face growing paler with each paragraph. "I've attached a complete accounting of my actions since leaving. Every transfer, every closed account, every cancelled membership, all perfectly legal and documented with timestamps and authorization codes." "He's rubbing it in our faces," Sloane growled, but furtinged her voice. "The house will be foreclosed next week," Maris read, her hand shaking. "I've arranged for the bank to give you until Friday to remove your personal belongings. Consider it my final act of courtesy." "He can't do this." Sloane's voice rose to a shriek. "This is our home." "It's his home," Maris corrected bitterly. "Everything was in his name. We just lived here, spending his money, mocking his caution, treating him like an ATM instead of a husband and father." "Keep reading," Sloane demanded, pacing Thekachin like a caged animal. "You've had a month to reflect on your behavior," Maris continued. "A month to understand that actions have consequences. A month to learn what life is like without someone cleaning up your messes." She paused, taking a shaky breath before continuing. "Sloane, your trust fund remains frozen until you're 30, however. I've arranged for the university to accept you back under 2 conditions. First, you'll move in NATO standard dormitory housing, not the luxury apartment you demanded. Second, you'll work part-time in the campus library to cover your personal expenses. A job." Sloane's laugh held a note of hysteria. "He expects me to work like some scholarship student." "These terms are non-negotiable," Maris read. "Consider it an opportunity to develop the work ethic and character you so desperately lack. Sloane grabbed her phone, punching in numbers with shaking fingers. I'm calling grandmother. She won't let him do this to me. Your grandmother helped him set this up. Maris read from the next paragraph. In fact, many family members have expressed their approval of these arrangements. They've watched for years as you manipulated and deceived everyone around you. Now they'll watch you learn to stand on your own feet. The phone slipped from Sloane's fingers, clattering on the marble floor. No, this isn't happening. As for you, Maris, she continued, her voice barely a whisper now, the divorce papers are being delivered this afternoon. My lawyer has already contacted every high-profile attorney in the city. None of them will represent you. The prenuptial agreement you signed without trading 23 years ago is ironclad. There must be something, Sloane insisted, her composure cracking. Some account we don't know about, some backup plan. You danced with him. Maris read the final lines, tears staining the paper. So I danced out of your lives. Now you can dance to the tune of your own making. The music has stopped. Ladies, time to pay the piper. The doorbell rang right on cue, as though Calder was orchestrating events from wherever he had hidden himself. A courier stood outside with another envelope, this one thick with Lego documents. Mrs. Matthews, the courier held out his tablet. I need your signature confirming receipt of divorce papers. Maris signed mechanically, her world narrowing to the weight of the envelope in her hands. Behind her, Sloane was still trying to reach family members, each call going straight to voicemail. No one's answering, she said, panic creeping into her voice. Mum, what are we going to do? Before Maris could respond, both their phones chimed with new email notifications. Sloane opened hers first, her face crumpling as she read. The movers, she choked out. Dad hired movers. They're coming tomorrow to start packing up his things. Everything. He paid for the art, the antiques, the collectibles. He's not just divorcing me, Maris realized, scanning her own email. He's erasing every trace of his presence from our lives, just like we tried to erase him with our constant belittling and manipulation. The doorbell rang again. This time, it was Madison's mother. Her expression, a mixture of satisfaction and disdain. I've come to discuss Sloane's outstanding debts to my daughter, she announced, brushing past them into the foyer. Now that it's clear you won't be able to hide behind your father anymore, we need to arrange a payment plan. Payment plan, Sloane. Laugh held a tinge of madness. I have nothing left to pay with. Then we'll discuss other options, Madison's mother replied coolly. Community service, perhaps. The court system takes a dim view of fraud, even among the young and privileged. The threat hung in the air like expensive orpheum, the kind they could no longer afford. Maris watched her daughter crumple under the weight of consequences, finally, understanding that charm and manipulation couldn't fix everything. I'll get my checkbook, Maris said quietly, though they all knew it was a meaningless gesture. Every check she wrote now would bounce, every promise of payment hollow. In the growing silence of their soon-to-be-lost home, mother and daughter faced whirlwinds of the life they'd taken for granted. Every ring of the doorbell brought new revelations of their failures, new evidence of Calder's methodical dismantling of their world. They had danced with betrayal, and Nathy would pay for every step. The two-bedroom apartment on the unfashionable side of town felt like Apperson's cell compared to their former mansion. Maris stood in what passed for a living room, surrounded by the few pieces of furniture they'd managed to prove were purchased with her modeling money from before the marriage. "This can't be all that's left," Sloane said, staring at the meager collection of possessions they'd been allowed to keep. "Where's my crystal collection? My insignia wardrobe?" "Your father's lawyers provided receipts for everything," Maris replied, her voice hollow. "Every handbag, every pair of shoes, every crystal figurine, all purchased with his money, which means they stay with him." The sound of a truck backing up drew them to the grimy window below. They watched as their neighbors unloaded furniture from a pickup truck, items they'd been forced to buy from a consignment shop to replace their lost luxury pieces. "I can't believe we have to use someone else's old furniture," Sloane shuddered. "Do you know how might have sat on that couch before us?" "Someone who actually earned it," Maris muttered, then raised her voice. "The movers are charging by the hour. Help me unpack." "Why bother?" Sloane kicked at a box marked kitchen items. "This place is a dump. The bathroom doesn't even have a jet tub, and I swear I saw a roach in the hallway." "Well, unless you have magically found a way to pay for something better. This dump is home now." Maris tore open a box, pulling out their few remaining dishes. "At least your father arranged for you to stay in the dorms next semester." Sloane's face darkened. "Right, the dorms. With a roommate, like some scholarship charity case." "You should be grateful," Maris snapped, her patience finally breaking. "At least you have options. The only modeling jobs I can get now are for discount department stores when I can get them at all." "Grateful?" Sloane laughed bitterly. "For what? For having to work in the library? For living in a tiny dorm room? For watching all my friends post about their luxury vacations while I'm shelving books? For having a future at all?" Maris hurled a packing paper across the room. "Do you understand what your father's done? He's left me with nothing. No alimony, no property, no investments. I have to start over at 45. This is your fault." Sloane grabbed hers in a handbag, one of the few she'd managed to hide from the lawyers. "If you hadn't danced with Alden, if I hadn't danced." Maris whirled on her daughter, who pushed me toward him, who kept making those little comments, orchestrating every interaction. "You played us both, Sloane, just like you played everyone else in your life. I learned from the best, didn't I?" Sloane's voice dripped venom. "Who taught me how to manipulate? Men who showed me that money was more important than integrity. Who raised me to think I was better than everyone else." A knock at the door interrupted their argument. Through the peephole, they saw Madison standing in the hallway holding a stack of papers. "What do you want?" Sloane demanded, yanking open the door. "Don't be mad," Madison replied, her designer outfit a stark contrast to their shabby surroundings. "My mother sent me with the repayment agreement. She says if you didn't sign it today, we're pressing charges." "Charges?" Mara stepped forward for borrowed money. "Don't be ridiculous. Not just borrowed money." Madison's voice was cold. "Fraud. Identity theft. Sloane used my credit card information without omission at least 6 times. We have the receipts." Sloane's face went pale. "Maddie, please. We've been friends forever. Friends don't steal from each other." Madison thrusts the papers at her. "Sign the agreement. You'll work at my mother's company over the summer filing, cleaning whatever she assigns. Minimum wage garnish to repay your debts." "Minimum wage?" Sloane staggered back. "I can't. I've never worked a day in your life," Madison finished. "Yeah, we know that's about to change." After Madison left, Maris found Sloane sitting on their second-hand couch, staring at the repayment agreement. Did you really steal from her? Maris, scared quietly. What difference does it make? Sloane's voice was empty. You stole from Dad for years, taking his money while flirting with other men, treating him like a bank account instead of a husband. At least I was honest about being a thief. Is that what you think I did? Maris sank onto the couch, beside her daughter. You think I just married him for money, didn't you? Sloane Tonetto faced her mother. All those stories about how boring he was, how he didn't understand you, how you settled for security instead of passion. Face it, Mum, you never loved him. You just loved his wallet. The truth of it hung between like poisonous gas, contaminating what little warmth remained in their relationship. I have to pack for Thedorn, Sloane said, finally standing. Apparently, I'm only allowed 2 suitcases of clothes. Dad's rules. Sloane, Maris reached for her daughter's hand, but Sloane pulled away. Don't, her voice cracked. Just don't. We did this to ourselves, and you know it. All those times we laughed at him, mocked him, treated him like he was nothing. We never thought he'd fight back. That's the real joke. We were so convinced of Ofor's own superiority that we never saw him outmaneuvering us at every turn. Through the thin walls of their new apartment, they could hear their neighbors arguing about money, about bills, about the everyday struggles of normal life. It was a preview of their new reality. No more luxury shops, no more spa days, no more looking down on the common people they'd once dismissed as beneath them. I'm going to bed, Sloane announced, heading for her tiny bedroom. I have to be up early tomorrow to fill out job applications. Apparently, that's what common people do. Maris watched her daughter's retreat, remembering all the times they'd sat together in their mansion, plotting and scheming, thinking they were so clever. Now they could barely stand to look at each other, each a reminder of how far they'd fallen. In the growing darkness of their downsized life, Maris pulled out her phone, scrolling through old photos of happier times. She paused on one from years ago, called her teaching Sloane to ride a bike, his face patient and kind despite their constant mockery of his conventional ways. We never deserved him, she whispered to the empty room. And now we never will again. 6 months after the dance that changed everything, Calder Matthews sat in his new office reviewing quarterly reports. The wall-to-ceiling windows offered a view of a different city skyline, one untainted by memories of betrayal. His phone buzzed with a message from his realtor. The mansion sale closed this morning. New owners take possession next week. Aldous himself a small smile. The house had sold for well above asking price. Another vindication of his financial instinct. He had donated Maris designer furniture to various charities, converted Sloane's trust fund into scholarships for underprivileged students, and systematically dismantled every trace of his old life. A knock at Athie's door interrupted his thoughts. Mr. Matthews, your dinner reservation is confirmed for 7, and the team's ready for the presentation whenever you are. Thanks, Jennifer. He smiled at his new assistant, hired for her competenza than her connections in society circles. How's your son doing with those college applications? Much better, thanks. Taught that scholarship program you recommended. Jennifer beamed. He's actually excited about studying business. The interaction was simple, professional, devoid of manipulation or hidden agendas. It felt cleansing after decades of navigating Maris's social machinations and Sloane's constant schemes. His intercom buzzed again. Sir, there's a call from the university board. Put it through. Called her, picked up the phone, listening as the board member updated him on Sloane's situation. She's struggling with the work-study program. The man reported, showed up late twice this week, complained about the manual labor. Should we make an exception? Absolutely not. Calder's voice was firm. She needs to learn that actions have consequences. If she can't handle their responsibilities, she can leave the program entirely. After hanging up, he opened his laptop, checking the surveillance report he'd hired. The photos showed his former life in stark detail. Maris leaving a discounted apartment, store wearing last season's fashion, Sloane carrying textbooks to her job at the library. Their used car parked outside the shabby apartment building. His phone rang again, a familiar number he hadn't seen in months. Called her. Maris's voice was smaller than he remembered. "Please, can who talk?" "We have nothing to discuss," he replied calmly. "The divorce is final. The assets are divided and the house has been sold." "That's not." She paused and he could hear the strain in her voice. "Sloane's in trouble. She's talking about dropping out, moving to Miami with some guy she met online. I can't control her anymore." "That sounds like a personal problem," Calder said, his voice devoid of emotion, one you created by teaching her that manipulation and deceit were acceptable behaviors. "She's your daughter." Maris's voice cracked. "Don't you care what happens to her?" "I cared for 18 years, he replied. "I tried to teach her values, responsibility, basic human decency. You undermined every lesson, turned her into a mirror image of yourself now. You can both live with the results. We're drowning here." Maris whispered, "Everything's falling apart. I never knew. I never realized how much work it took to maintain your lifestyle." Calder finished. "How much I sacrificed to give you everything you wanted. No, you never did realize. You were too busy dancing with other men and mocking my dedication." He could hear her crying no, the sound bringing no emotion to his heart. "The department store job barely covers rent," she said between sobs. "My modeling contacts won't return my calls. I don't know how to live like this. You should have thought of that before you chose your dance partner." The words were cold. "Final goodbye, Maris. Don't call again." He hung up, turning back to his window. Below, the city hummed with activity. People working, building, creating value instead of just consuming it. His new life felt clean, uncluttered by the constant drama and manipulation that had characterized his marriage. The intercom buzzed one final time. "Sir, your dinner guests have arrived early. Should I send them up?" "I'll meet them in the lobby," he replied, gathering his jacket. The elevator ride down gave him time to reflect on the changes 6 months had brought. His company was thriving, freed from the social obligations Maris had insisted were necessary. His new friends were genuine, drawn to his character rather than his wallet. Even his health had improved. The constant stress of managing his wife, on daughter's expectations, replaced by the simple pleasure of living authentically. The lobby doors opened to reveal his diner companions, business associates who respected his acumen, valued his insights, and never once suggested he needed to be more spontaneous or exciting. They greeted him with genuine warmth, their conversation focusing on deals and opportunities rather than society gossip and manipulation. "Shall we?" He gestured toward the door. Whereas driver waited with a car far more modest than the one Maris had insisted they needed to maintain appearances. Asti drove through the city. Calder's phone buzzed with one final message. A photo from the university security office showing Sloane arguing with her supervisor at the library. Her face twisted in the same entitled expression she'd learned from her mother. He deleted the message without responding. Their choices had led them here. Their actions had destroyed the family he'd worked so hard to build. Now they could experience life without his protection, his provision, his endless patience with their schemes. Some would call it revenge, but Calder saw it differently. He'd simply stepped away, removed his support from those who'd never appreciated it, and allowed natural consequences to unfold. The fact that those consequences had devastated their comfortable. The world wasn't revenge, it was justice. The restaurant was quiet, elegant, without being ostentatious. As Calder sat with his new associates discussing plans and possibilities, he felt the last weights of his old life falling away. Somewhere across the city, in a small apartment with peeling wallpaper, his ex-wife and daughter were learning harsh lessons about loyalty, respect, and the true cost of betrayal. He raised his glass, toasting to new beginnings and clean breaks. The dance was over. The music had stopped.